Emergency vehicles right-of-way, observing the move-over law and correctly yielding. When an emergency response vehicle uses its siren or flashing lights, the legislation stipulates that it should have priority over all other road users. Both of these gadgets are typically used by police cars, ambulances, and fire engines to signal to other drivers that they must yield. When dealing with an emergency, every second matters. Your cooperation may be necessary if an emergency vehicle needs to pass. Here, we outline when you must give the right-of-way to an oncoming emergency vehicle with flashing lights or sirens. The rear is being approached by emergency vehicles. If you notice flashing lights in your side or rear view mirrors and hear sirens, it's likely that an emergency vehicle is approaching you from that direction and is vying for the same space on the road. You must give the right-of-way in this scenario by stopping as near to the right-hand side of the road as you can. While you wait for the emergency vehicle to pass, try to stay parallel to the curb and come to a complete stop. Keep an eye out for other drivers and pull over carefully because they will also be trying to yield to the emergency vehicle. Simply pull over as far as you can to give the emergency responder the most room to pass if there is not enough room on the road for you to move right up to the curb. Once the emergency vehicle has successfully passed you, re-enter your lane and proceed cautiously on your intended route. A minimum following distance is required by law for emergency vehicles with flashing lights and sirens in the majority of states. Drivers must follow emergency vehicles at a minimum distance of 300 feet in both New Jersey and California. Drivers must follow emergency vehicles at a distance of at least 500 feet in Texas, Florida, and Pennsylvania. Find out the required following distance in your state by consulting your driver's manual section on emergency vehicles. Never drive too closely behind an emergency vehicle or in its trail to beat other traffic. Emergency vehicles are moving forward. You must still surrender the right-of-way if an emergency vehicle approaching from the opposite direction on the opposite side of the road is flashing its lights and sirens. Just as if the car were moving in the same direction, halt and pull over to the right curb. The emergency vehicle driver may need to utilize the middle of the road or the lane you are in to pass through if traffic on the opposite side of the road are unable to properly pull over. Turning the corner for emergency vehicles. When emergency vehicles approach you at a junction with flashing lights or sirens, you must give the right-of-way. Move to the right side of the road if you haven't yet entered the intersection and the car is coming up in your lane. You might be able to maintain your position without impeding on the other driver if the car is not in your lane. Pulling forward onto the junction to give way to the emergency vehicle is not permitted because it is forbidden to stop at an intersection. When an emergency vehicle approaches the intersection, drivers must cede the right-of-way by reversing out of the intersection and halting on the right side of the road. Keep a close eye on emergency vehicles. Always keep an eye out for emergency vehicles coming at you or passing you to make sure nothing in your car is in their way. The emergency vehicle's driver may use a loudspeaker or hand signals to give advice to passing motorists. Because they have a better perspective of the road and can plan the best course of action for cars giving the right-of-way, emergency vehicle drivers should always be obeyed. Move over legislation. This traffic regulation, which mandates drivers to leave any lane next to an emergency response area if road conditions permit it, is present in the majority of states. This statute is known as the Move Over Law in Texas and numerous other states, though it may have a different name in your jurisdiction. Drivers in Pennsylvania, for example, will be familiar with this as the Steer Clear statute. For specifics, consult your personal driver's manual. The United States has a variety of move-over laws, many of which carry harsh penalties. What therefore constitutes an emergency response area? Any area on or close to a roadway when work is being done by police, medical professionals, firefighters, coroners, rescue workers, recovery drivers, or any other kind of emergency responder is referred to as this. Other drivers must slow down and empty the lane next to the work area since operating near traffic puts emergency response vehicles at serious danger of damage. Reduce your speed to a crawl and move over as much as you can within your lane if there isn't enough room on the road for you to join into a more distant lane. For motorists that are unable to move out of the lane next to the emergency response area, some state regulations establish a speed limit. This speed limit in Texas is 20 miles per hour less than the posted limit, or 5 miles per hour if the stated limit is 25 miles per hour or less. Make sure you read the entire section in your manual on giving way to emergency vehicles or slowing down. A hefty fine may be assessed for breaking the rules.